What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the MG YouTube channel. I'm Malachi Grubb, CEO of Lead Automation Lead Properties and an investor in Tesla. Sorry, I just rolled out of bed, guys. I'm just waking up. But first of all, I'm going to start this video off by saying this is not investment advice, but we're going to talk about some investments and talk about Tesla specifically and why I think right now is the most important time to invest in Tesla. If you're already an investor, if you're thinking about investing in Tesla, this is the moment. And the reason why this is the moment is because FSD is pretty much there. I mean, when I say pretty much there, I mean it's there. You know, I've had version 12, I've had version 13, and now we're on version 14.2.1, and especially for the Cybertruck, like version 13 in the Cybertruck versus version 13 in the Model Y. First of all, the Cybertruck was missing some features that the Model Y had. For example, like the Cybertruck couldn't reverse. It would try to reverse, but then like it wouldn't be able to flip into, like, switch gears into reverse. Which was like a pretty major limitation because, you know, in version 13 we got our like 3-point turns or 6-point turns or whatever, where your vehicle can, you know, go forward, reverse to turn around and like, you know, a cul-de-sac or wherever it may need to be. So, again, the Model Y had that, the Cybertruck didn't have that. And so for version 14, you know, the Cybertruck got a major upgrade. If I was going to tell somebody like one reason why not to get the Cybertruck over another Tesla, it was because of that. It was because the Cybertruck didn't have those capabilities. Now, I'm also not sure about like the Model X and the Model S, and if they had the same ability as like the Model Y and the Model 3. I'm pretty positive they had the ability to reverse and go forward and all that. But yeah, so when we came to version 14, well, actually before I get into that, some of the other issues that like difference the Cybertruck had over like the Model Y is like whenever you were turning around, like taking a left turn, if you had a sloped median, and this only happened on a sloped median, the vehicle would ride up on the median sometimes, and sometimes it would just barely like kind of clip it and it wasn't a big deal at all. And then other times it would you know, drop off where you're dropping off basically a curb where, you know, it's a, you know, 3-inch drop or something like that. Now, I would never ride all the way up on the middle of the median or anything, but again, it would, you know, ride up part way up that slope and then drop off. But yeah, and then when we got version 14, now basically the Cybertruck is very comparable to the Model Y. The Cybertruck prior to that felt like it had Model Y FSD in the Cybertruck, and like it just didn't know like the size of vehicle it was and all that. Oh, one other thing the Cybertruck would do is on a curve, like a real tight like curve, turning left. I don't know, not turning right, only turning left. The vehicle would like whip it really hard, like it would go into and then boom, whip it really hard and like accelerate through the curve, which is like really weird. I just want to point out that other condition that was there, and that's gone. Like all these things are gone in this new version 14 update for the Cybertruck. So the Cybertruck in comparison got a much better or a much bigger jump than like the Model Y. Now don't get me wrong, like the FSD I think is just like 10 times better. And when I say 10 times better, you know, the thing is, like, version 13 was so good that it's hard to really say 10 times better, because you're getting to a point where things are so, like, we've been so close, like, from version 13 that, like, everything's incremental at this point. However, with version 14, you know, let's say, for instance, in version 13, if we were like 98% of the way there, version 14 took us to like 99.5% of the way there. And honestly, like, I'm trying to think of like some conditions where I've had disengagements or needed to disengage. Everything, actually, I think any disengagement that I've had, besides just like wanting to get through a parking lot quicker, has been maps related. You know, like the other day I went to a Rural King, okay? And the way the Rural King's positioned is like there's a neighborhood that like goes to the Rural King parking lot, and the maps took me down that road, but however that end of that road's gated off where you're not able to get through into the Rural King parking lot. Now, would it have tried to like navigate, go to the end of the road and navigate and go back around and like ignore GPS, or would GPS rerouted? I don't know. Again, there was kind of like more of a GPS issue, I would say, than a FSD issue. Yeah, everything's been kind of maps related as an issue. I mean, we're just cruising right now in FSD. I'm in standard mode. But it's just like everything's been shaved off. I mean, especially, one thing that is kind of nice is like the Cybertruck was so much further behind than like the Model Y. Just due to like how much more buggy it was. You know, if like the Model Y was 98% of the way ready, I would have said that the Cybertruck was like 95% of the way ready. And so the jump in the Cybertruck just feels so much better, because again, like when you were gonna hit that left turn, there were a lot of times when you kind of wanted to engage. You could tell like in that turn, in the instance of that turn, that it was going to turn too sharp and it was going to really ride up on that curb hard. So you would need to take over, or you would need to. It's still been fine. It wouldn't have crashed, but like just kind of more out of like a courtesy thing, or just not wanting to deal with the abruptness of it going up and back down off the curb, and everybody around you being like, "What's this dude doing?" Yeah. So you had like disengagements for like those types of things there, but you know, obviously like version like 14 like version 14 for version did we get version 14.1? I can't remember right now, but you know, things were very buggy there. But whenever, you know, Tesla introduces a new major variant of the software, you know, they basically pull a bunch of like the safety things back, and it actually acts more unsafe because of how safe it's trying to be. It's like if you have a teenage driver who's like scared to drive, you know, and or like somebody that's like gets stressed out whenever they go to like a new city they've never driven in, and they're kind of like just like on edge. Like that's how the vehicle feels in like a newer version of the software. After we've came out with the next minor revisions of the software, so like we went 14.1 to 14.2 to now we're like 14.2.1. I mean, it's just completely smoothed out. Completely. I mean, we went from like individuals thinking like, shit, did FSD just get worse? To like, holy shit, we're there. Like, we're there. So to take this back to like investment and all that good stuff, and you know, why do I think now is like the best buying opportunity in the entire time of Tesla, at least in like the past, like, you know, 2 to 5 years. I would say this is one of the best buying times for Tesla. Don't get me wrong. There's been buying dips and buying opportunities that I've definitely been lucky enough to capitalize on, and have made so much money off of Tesla. Just kind of like, I'm a long-term holder of Tesla, but I also like swing trade Tesla as well. So like, whenever it dips down, like we dipped down in like May or something like that to like, I don't know what it was. I think it was like $180 a share or something crazy. You know, I was buying shares down at that point. And then since then, you know, I kind of just trade in and out with the volatility of Tesla. So when we have major, huge green days, I'll only trade out of a couple shares, and then I'll buy back in on a couple more shares whenever it dips back down again. But that's for like another video on kind of like how I go about trading some of the stocks. But this is such a big opportunity right now because we've never been this close with FSD, and AKA we've never been this close with like Robotaxi. And Robotaxi is going to be the huge flip switch, and money will start to pour into Tesla. First of all, it's already starting to happen, but whenever we start to see more rapid expansion into new cities, and especially this is when the definitive change will happen, is when Tesla starts generating revenue off of Robotaxi. Once Wall Street starts seeing that Tesla's generating revenue off of Robotaxi, it's going to be over with. You're going to have so much Wall Street money pouring in, and the fundamentals will finally be there, which Tesla hasn't had for many, many years. People like really invested in Tesla for the hype, and not really the fundamentals at all. It's more the future growth of the company and what the future potential is of the company. Not only will we have these massive Robotaxi revenues, but then we also have like Optimus to back it up. But really, I'm saying this is the biggest investment right now, primarily just due to the flip is about to switch for FSD, Robotaxi, and the revenue generation of Robotaxi. That is going to be the monumental shift. You'll keep having your hope investors, right? Your investors that are investing in the future, kind of trickling in more and more as more confidence is built. Like when we go like city to city, Wall Street will also start to pick up on that, city to city. But then again, once you start seeing revenue generation, that's when Wall Street will really pay attention. And and also one of my plays too is I actually have puts against like Uber and Lyft, because I think that once revenue generation starts to occur and Tesla starts to expand into enough cities, that Uber and Lyft are going to be hit so hard. The market's going to freak out. They're going to say, oh shit, we better get out of this before it's too late. Now my timing might be a little bit off. Like some of my puts are like 6 months out, and I'll trade out of those puts too. Like as soon as like we have like a red day and I'm profitable on those puts, I'll sell out of them, at least right now. And why? It's because I can make a quick 20% return. Sometimes I make a 20% return in a day. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's a month. But I'm making like a 20% return on those puts. And so I'm taking profit. And it's still questionable, like if we're talking about 6 months out, if Tesla will have disrupted enough for Wall Street to pay attention, and or just other general investors. Because once people start coming to the realization, for example, when I talked about revenue for Tesla, whenever Tesla, so like I'm gonna I'll just let it park, whatever. It's parking right now, by the way. People are very specific about their parking spots, It'd be nice to be able to select like parking spots. Oh, so same as like what I was saying with Tesla revenue generation. The same will occur with Uber and Lyft and their revenue decline. As soon as Tesla starts to eat into their revenue, and Tesla's just starting to ramp up, and Uber and Lyft revenue is starting to go down, and you start to see Tesla's utilization go up, like aka if they put out reports saying, Austin, Texas, we took 100,000 rides this month or something like that. Especially if you have data that says, if you just have clear data that shows that you're disrupting the numbers of Uber and Lyft, that's whenever the decline will happen for Uber and Lyft. So you'll start to see, you'll see them fall off a cliff in no time. Why? Because people get scared, and scared money flees quick. And that's why I'm super bearish on Uber and Lyft, because it doesn't take much for people to basically get like soft hands and drop a stock. As soon as they're scared that it's not gonna be going towards the upside, they get scared and they sell out. It happens very easily. And in that scenario, Uber and Lyft could fall off quicker than Tesla climbs. Once they feel like Uber and Lyft have met their demise, and or is showing a trajectory of that demise. It doesn't even have to be the full demise. It has to be the trajectory of that demise. AKA, Uber was 99% market share in a city. Tesla starts. 2 months later, 3 months later, Tesla has eaten into 25% of the revenue, 10% of the revenue, 10%, even 5%, right? But I think if you see the higher numbers, like 20%, or plus, that's whenever people are like, oh, whoa, they just entered and it's been a few months and they've taken 25% of market share. Oh, that's whenever people will, that's whenever everybody, basically, that's going to be your retail investors, that's going to be your Wall Street, everybody is going to start seeing that trend and they're going to bail out. But again, this is about investing in Tesla. But this kind of just gives you a framework of like how I'm thinking about Tesla's Robotaxi and its disruption in that entire industry. And I would probably do the same for Optimus and puts against another company. Also, we're too many years out for Optimus for me to be worried about trying to put a put against somebody. And on top of that, I don't want to say there's a bigger moat around Robotaxi than there is Optimus Robot, but Tesla being ready to send it and having such a scalable solution in comparison to all the competitors and the other services that are out there, which is aka just Uber and Lyft, the only two players out there basically, at least in the US. And then if you look at like Optimus, the thing with Optimus is like there are other robotics companies, like all of them are not really functional for doing anything useful, other than like your traditional standardized robots. You have some things like collaborative robots that are, quite a bit more useful. But and if you don't know, I'm actually a robotics expert. I spent my entire career in automation and robotics. But you have your traditional robots and some of your specialized robots that are extremely good at efficiencies and stuff like that. But as far as humanoids go, there's not a good humanoid robot on the market at all. All of them are junk. Every one of them. Every single one of them is not really capable of doing anything. They can maybe pick up a tote and carry a tote from here to there, which is like the same shit you can do with a conveyor. So yeah, they're just completely useless at the moment. However, with that being said, so is Tesla's. At this moment, right? And so Robotaxi is so close and so scalable so immediately that it just has like this disruption switch flip, right? Now, the other thing to Optimus and like puts and stuff like that is that, one, there's not even competition that I would say is a big enough company that is that would even be worthy enough to put puts on, that are available to put puts on. So like, say for instance, like Figure One, I would put puts against Figure One. I would put puts against a company that all they're doing is a humanoid robot, and they're like a funded company from what am I trying to say? Not a publicly funded company, privately funded company, I guess. It's not what I'm trying to say. Basically a startup, if it's a startup type of company, then and again, all they're doing is humanoid robots. I would bet against those. However, on the flip side, betting against any company that's in the humanoid space is not necessarily smart. The only reason it would be smart is because a business is just ran poorly, and they don't have like the exact technical expertise or manufacturing experience or all these different things that are required to actually get to mass production. You know, these companies that are just working in a lab to try to get it to work, I think it's highly likely those fail. I mean, it's a lot of times those type of companies fail, especially when you're talking about something as complex as humanoid robots. I mean, if people understood the complexity of like a humanoid robot, even a 6-axis robot that is traditional, that's the same robot that you used on the last project, is something that's super complicated to you know, engineer around. And we're talking about a robot that doesn't even have its software architecture set up, basically. That's the easiest way to put it. So we haven't even got to the point of having a robot like programmable. I know we're talking about doing it with AI and all that good stuff, but I mean, I guess in a sense it is programmable because Tesla's able to like program it to do some things, like pick up the trash and all that good stuff. And they're saying they're training it with video. I do think Tesla's gonna be very silent with how good it is. I think they're gonna keep releasing some of these like little highlight videos occasionally, just keep the kind of hype going and the buzz going. But I think they are also going to be very hidden about how far along they are with it, because if you come out with how far along you are, that really sparks competition to really light a fire up under their ass, and then they feel like they gotta rush more quickly and do everything they can to they got to do everything that they can to try to catch up or whatever, right? And also it distills confidence of like, oh, they did it, now it's doable. You know, now everybody's confident it's doable. Other investors will not be interested to invest more money into those companies that are like more of a startup company, because we have a success story over here, and humanoid robots will be the biggest revenue generation, capital shift of all time. We think Robotaxi is big and all that. And also, too, another big thing is there's a huge space for it. If you just look at traditional robots, I mean, there's like 6 big brands of traditional robots. And within those 6 brands of traditional robots, I mean, they have like 10 plus robots, you know? And so they have 10 plus different model robots. So with that being said, if you have 7 companies with 10 robots each, you know, that's 70 different robot variants. If Tesla's working on one robot variant, now don't get me wrong, they could shift and have other multiple robot variants pretty immediately, maybe just by scaling up the size of actuators and stuff like that. But the thing is, there's going to be a market for that. There's going to be a market for different sizes of robots, different strengths of robots. And so like you may not know this with robotics, but when it comes to like payload, a lot of times having shorter, smaller robot makes the robot able to handle more of a load. Now you lose reach with that being said. So if you increase your reach, so you give your robot very long arms, it then becomes weaker and is not able to lift as much of a payload, at least out in front of it. But in general, in total, it's going to have limitations to its payload. Now again, you could throw in bigger motors, but then to throw in bigger motors, you need bigger compartments to where those motors are going to be at, you know. And so And so this is where the variance is going to be very important. You know, I mean, you can have one robot do the exact same things the way that a human does, but I think in a lot of instances, maybe it won't make sense. And the world is engineered for humans. So most of the world, whether it be in manufacturing or in your household, is already engineered to do things at human heights. However, there's still some humans that are, you know, better doing some things than other. Now, you know, the average human height is going to be the best overall common size. But again, somebody who's like 6'7" and can reach the 6'7", reach the top cabinet or whatever, without getting out a step stool or something, that'll have its advantages, you know. And you might even have advantages where, like, you're in a manufacturing situation, and you have one humanoid robot working here, and you have another more giant humanoid robot that can work over top of that robot. And so, like, the one robot's here, and the other robot's kind of like peering over top of them, you know, and doing its thing. But whatever, that's kind of a side tangent. Let's just kind of dive back into like, you know, Tesla and its investment and all that good stuff. So, really, to wrap all this up, you know, robotaxis, like, or FSD's here, which means robotaxi is going to be here, because we already know that robotaxi has been operating on a version of FSD that's been modified. Now, honestly, I think that the game plan is to not have a modified version of FSD, like only a UI interface difference. I think Tesla did robotaxi on a different software version because they needed to roll it out. They needed investors to see that we got robotaxi ready. So my perception of what they've done is they basically went through and hard-coded any instances where there were issues of intervention. You know, especially at like specific turns or intersections or something along those lines. They went in there, they hard-coded those particular instances, and got it functional, so that way they could just present to the world like, hey, look, we can do it. They can also start testing some of the other facets of robotaxi, like pick up and drop off and UI of the app, and start creating a team around that and getting that part developed. So that's why you need to press things forward as hard as you can, is so that way you can kind of continue to create development in other aspects of like, in this instance, robotaxi. So yeah, you know, robotaxi and FSD are literally right around the corner. We're supposed to get expansion by the end of this year. Maybe they'll hit us with something dumb where, like, the last week or something, they open up in multiple different cities. I don't think so, though. I mean, I think they'll open up in multiple different cities, but you also have the operational challenges of launching in different cities, you know. Management and stuff like that's not going to be able to oversee the multiple different cities. So if they are going to launch multiple different cities, unless they just hired a layer of management, which doesn't seem like much of how Tesla goes about doing things, they could have hired a layer of management for, you know, just handling robotaxi specifically. And so if they launch like 3 or 4 or 5 of them in one go, that there's layers of management to handle like whatever comes up. But yeah. You know, no matter what, even if they have layers of management, it'd be wise for them to like stagger it out at least weeks apart. This week we'll go to this city, next week we'll go to that city, next week we'll go to that city. And it could also be that they're trying to get V14 like so ready, because like they don't want to make a separate version of robotaxi for or sorry, they don't want to make a separate version of FSD for robotaxi for these new cities. Like I said, they hard-coded the one for Austin. That's my perception of what they've done. Probably the same for the California one. So they don't want to do that. They want to make it to where they can just send it, you know, and do that, because that's one of their big leverages to scaling, is that they don't have to train for every city. That's what the big aspect of their scaling is. Now, even if they had to do some small amount of training and then they would just be good forever, that's still definitely acceptable. But yeah. This is the time to invest. Again, not investment advice, but this is a good time to put every dollar that you have there. I would say within 1 year, you'll start to see the major growth. The biggest factor will be how fast or slow this trickles out. You know, if we have 10 cities by like the, you know, third month of 2026, then that's going to be a super fast expansion. If we get to 20 by the end of 2027, you know, that will be a fast enough expansion that people will say, oh shit. Because if you don't know already, like, over 50% of the U.S. population lives in a total of 20 cities. So if they could cover 20 cities in 1 year, they've covered over 50% of the U.S. population, which they're supposed to do by the end of this year. So we'll see. We'll see if they can get to that. You know, maybe they'll launch in those cities with a few vehicles, and they're going to call that the launch, and then they're going to still scale that up and all that good stuff. That's highly likely they'll do that. But yeah, guys, hopefully this was enjoyable, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Subscribe if you like this type of content, and yeah, peace.